Hey guys, it's Keith from Kegland, and we've also got Richard from Lallemand again. So Richard, obviously one of the experts at Lallemand, advising a lot of breweries on how to get the most out of yeast, and we're lucky enough to have him doing another 15-minute boil kit. So what we've got here is we've got some water already preheated, and these 15-minute boil kits, essentially they're supposed to be a means for you guys at home who have been doing things like cans and stuff like that, to just take that one step further and get onto some really exciting recipes where you're going to get much better results than just getting a kit and kilo, but they're a little bit more involved, but still doesn't use a lot of hardware. So today we're actually just using the DigiBoil. You can actually also use just a pot on a burner at home. So I've got another video going into even more detail about the whole 15-minute boil process. But today, this 15-minute boil kit, we're doing this Hazy Pale Cosmos. So that's this recipe on the website. So what we've got in this recipe, it's kind of exciting because the first time we've actually got one ingredient here, which is called our oat extract. So this is a dried oat extract we've got in this bag, and essentially this adds, a fair bit of protein, and it's really important with, when you're doing things like hazies, to have, something in there to make sure you've got that sort of haze stability, I suppose. And one of the best ways to do that is add oats, but typically, the only oats that people had access to was either malted oats or rolled oats or other oats like that. And oats can really be complicated in the brewing process because they can really gum things up. You'd probably know a bit about that,
Yes.
working in the commercial brewing industry. But they can turn into essentially like porridge, as you'd expect, and that can really affect the laudability and stuff like that. So this new oat extract product, essentially, it's already extracted, so you just tip it in, and away you go. You're getting some good, oat characteristics and that oat mouthfeel. How would you describe it, actually, the oat
It's
mouthfeel?
like
when you
smooth and creamy.
Smooth and creamy, that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
One thing you'll notice, you can even get some of this, mix it with a bit of water and taste it on its own. You'll get that sort of creaminess. I kind of likened it to, I don't know, that creaminess you get out of like a Werther's original, lolly, that kind of creaminess, I suppose. It kind of reminds me of that when I've sort of tasted it straight out of the bag.
Yep.
But yeah, this particular recipe, we've got a fair bit of hops in here. So we've got like Falconer's Flight, Nectarine, and also the Superdelic in here. The other thing we're going to chuck in here is also, we've got the New England yeast, but there are other options with yeast, isn't there, Richard?
Yep, absolutely. I mean, New England we've chosen for this recipe has a really unique stone fruit peach character to it, but the great thing with this recipe is versatility in terms of using yeast. So if you want to experiment, you could move on to, say, some Verdant yeast, or if you don't have any temperature control, or if it's the blazing summertime, then using something like the Voss would work as a great alternative.
Yep, nice one. So if you went with the Voss, maybe you'd if you swapped over that, the Voss you maybe get like a little bit more of those, that also kind of tends a little bit towards citrus, especially when it gets a bit warm, is that fair to say?
Citrus, juicy orange is probably the most common flavour descriptor with the Voss, so it will change it ever so slightly, but it's a great little spin and a great point to start playing with is to change the yeast.
I have also found with the Verdant's actually one of my favourite yeasts. I use it all the time at home for a lot of NEPAs and that type of stuff. One thing about Verdant, I find that actually for hazies in particular, I find it really good. I sort of get a bit of a persistent haze. Is that sort of fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. It does seem to hang around a lot more. It's a lot more of a permanent haze, or a more lingering haze than some of the other yeast. But yeah, it's great versatile yeast and can be used in English ales as well. But in hazes, it really shines.
Yep. And how do you find that haze sort of works with these large amounts of dry hops as well? What do you think, Richard?
There are certain hop varieties and certain yeasts that will promote the interaction between the hops and the yeast, and you will get a haze, almost a haze promoter.
Yep.
And that can be very much down to the hop variety itself, and also the addition point too. So if you're adding hops early in in dry hop fermentation or late in dry hop fermentation, you can really tailor that haze in with the interaction with the yeast.
Yep, nice one. All right, well, this water is already sitting at pretty much 70 degrees Celsius. Look, it doesn't have to be so precise, so just sort of in that kind of range. And then we've got this bag here. This is a bunch of malt in there. A lot of this is wheat. Wheat is obviously another good way to get protein into these types of hazies. And protein is really important for that haze stability, which you were saying before. So I've lost the spoon. Yeah, I'll give that a bit of a stir in there. So we're going to leave this in there for about half an hour and just come back. I basically got the boiler turned off, so it's basically got up to 7 degrees. Look, we're not going to be too stressed about if the temperature's dropping over time or anything like that. So we're just going to come back in half an hour and then we're going to continue the process and chuck some of these oat extract and dry malt extract into the boiler and boil it up. So we'll see you guys in a few moments. Alrighty, so this has now been steeping actually for about an hour or something like that. So we're going to pull this out. This is a relatively large amount of grain in this recipe because a whole kilo, I think, in this particular recipe. So I'm going to give this a good old squeeze, try to get as much of that goodness out of there as possible. So we got the beer enhancer. So that's a mixture of dry malt extract, dextrose, maltodextrin, and those goodies. Then we've got the oat extract and the malt extract. Now this particular type of oat extract, it's highly fermentable actually, so it does ferment out really dry, and has, you know, not far off the fermentability of actual dry malt extract.
We're also going to chuck in a capsule of the Saccharomyces as well, so a bit of yeast nutrient to go in there. It gives it a good amount of zinc, good for the yeast to feed on. So these are great little capsules that you can just chuck into the boil itself, but you can also split it open. So that's what we're going to do with this one. We're just going to split it open and pour in the contents.
Good one. So I can hear that's already increasing in temperature. So I reckon it'll take us about 10 minutes to get up to a boil. Then we'll come back and we're going to add the hops and continue the process. So as you can see, we've got steam coming out top, so we're up to the boil there, and I think it does say that on the screen there, yeah, 98 degrees, so pretty much at boiling point there. And we're going to chuck these Falconer Flight. Now this is already weighed out to 25 grams in our new packaging. We just start to do all our hops in. And that's it. So I'll give that a bit of a stir and start the stopwatch. It is basically 1:55. So we're going to come back in 15 minutes, cool that down, and then we'll get it in the fermenter. Alrighty, so we were boiling with 5 litres in here. I've now just added about 15 litres of icy cold water in there to bring the temperature down. So it's sitting at around about sort of just over 18 degrees, about 20 degrees. Look, that's kind of in the hitting range. So what do you reckon? Should we add this this yeast in here in New England?
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, we'll transfer the wort into the fermenter and then we'll chuck in some New England. So yeah, 20 degrees, 18, 20 degrees. Absolutely perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, with this yeast, all we need to do is ensure you receive 2 packets with the kit. Yeah, make sure both of them go in so you get the optimum fermentation speed and you get that flavour profile as well.
Yep. So I'm going to open that tap. There's one nice thing about using the DigiBoil is, you don't have to tip a pot, I suppose. So we're starting to get that transferred, and I suppose we may as well just chuck it straight in the top. So I've got a bit of ethanol spray. I've sprayed on the pack here.
Yep, always a good practice to just spray the anything that touches the yeast packet with ethanol, including your hands. Just sprinkle over, and the great thing with dry yeast, you just pour it in as it's filling. Should mix on quite nicely.
That's it. Now, this is the last bit of video which I'm going to have you... Oh, well, I'll bring you in, Richard, when we do the tasting. But in between now and then, I'm going to be doing some dry hopping. So what's the dry hopping schedule you'd recommend? Because there's... I don't know, I feel like you ask 10 people about dry hopping, and some people say like high Krausen, some people say like day 7, some people say towards the end.
Yep.
I mean, with this particular scenario, I might also add... I'm just going to open the lid because I'm trying to keep this a bit simple, back to basics. I'm not going to use the hot bomb because I'm going to use this like somebody beginning in this type of kit would probably do it. So there is going to be a little bit of risk of when I open that lid, a bit of oxygen getting in. So yeah, what do you reckon the best time to dry hop would be in this instance?
I think you need to dry hop towards the end of fermentation, so you've still got a little bit of activity in there, and then when you add the dry hops, that will probably rouse it up a bit, release some more CO2, and then you've still got some fermentation as well that will just purge out that CO2, any oxygen ingress towards the end. But yeah, definitely adding towards the end. It still gives a chance for the yeast to do a little bit of influence on the flavour.
Yep.
But one of the great things with this recipe in particular, in having all these dry hops, is you could experiment with the point that you added them. So you might add, say, maybe one of the bags of nectarine earlier on, and then leave the rest till later, or you could maybe a couple of days into ferment, just add one of the nectarine or one of the superdelic or something like that, and then have a bit of a play and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of did. I know at the last conference I went to, they were talking about the effect of like dry hops, and then on haze in particular. And they were sort of talking about how, like, if you're at sort of day 7, that's where to get the maximum haze effect out of the dry hops. But it sort of comes down to what you're chasing after the beer. Want to get the absolute maximum haze, or you want the maximum sort of freshness of that hops, which is probably more going to lean itself towards the end, as you say. But yeah, in this particular recipe, we've got a starting gravity of like 1046, so 1.046 gravity. And then it's got a final gravity of hopefully around about 1.012. So maybe adding dry hops, you reckon, at that, maybe when it gets out to about 1020 sort of range,
somewhere between
so got about maybe
1020 or the high teens.
6, 8 points to move. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's probably about the optimal point to do it. And it's still got a bit of fermentation, but not so early that some of those delicious volatiles that are released will actually just be vented off to the atmosphere.
Yep, beauty. All right, so I'll be fermenting these. I'm going to chuck this in a chamber, get that fermenting away at 18 degrees. This one I might try to bump the temperature up a little bit towards the end as well. So I'll get a bit of a diacetyl rest at like 18 and 20, because this one will be in the fermentation chamber. So at 18 degrees, crank it up to, let's say, 24, gradually build it up there. And then a dry hop somewhere in the range of when it's just below about 1020. What do you reckon? Good. All right, no worries. Well, we'll see you guys at the end when we do the tasting.
See you then.
Okay, so it's been about 4 weeks, which is well and truly enough for this particular Cosmos recipe. So let's pour out a couple here with the old Nuka-Tap Mini and see how we go. Or even just with that pour, I can smell the hops already. The aroma's like coming off.
Great looking haze as well. It's like really...
Yeah, the haze. I mean, that is totally the work of that oat extract. All right, let's have a look. Yeah, the oat extract has been one of those things which has really enabled us, because haze in an extract beer has been something really, really hard to get previously. But with this oat extract, I think it really gives us a lot of opportunities to make these new recipes up.
Definitely the hops come to the fore. There's that, superdelic is really quite prominent, but it's not overbearing. The other hops that are in there, are also, allowing to shine, but it's...
I feel like I could almost crank it up a little bit more with the hops, to be honest with you. I wouldn't mind a little high dose in there, but it's certainly, you can notice it. I'm getting certainly the stone fruit. A little bit of citrus, not like massive, but more, for me, it's sort of tending to go like, stone fruit.
Definitely stone fruit. There is because New England typically gets a really subtle peach as well.
Actually,
there's like a sweetness.
It's funny how you hear somebody say something and then you adopt it. But I think the peach is, the peach in particular is...
The flavour's really good as well. Like the hops are not, it's not banging your face bitterness. There's no like hop burn from the dry hop. It's just really nicely, it's good hopping level. Good bit of expression from the yeast. And it's obviously, it's fermented quite well. It's down to around about 3.5 Plato or 10, 13, 10, 14 sort of, which is really, good for a hazy beer. And kind of what we would expect from this strength of hazy IPA with the New England yeast. But yeah, I mean, it's got a nice bit of sweetness. It's got a nice, it's rounded body, but it's not overbearingly sweet. It's not overwhelmingly dry.
But I would say, honestly, not a word of a lie, for an extract beer, that is one of the best extract hazies I've ever had. I haven't done heaps of extract brewing, recently, I must say, because I'm sort of trying to get back to basics and trying to get back into it. But yeah, it's really easy drinking. It doesn't linger on the palate. It's like pretty clean, and it just sort of, you get that, front end fruit burst, but then
Yeah, I could totally drink down a few
I
of
dare
these in the
say
sun
it's
for sure.
sessionable.
Yeah, sessionable.
You know, for a hazy IPA, there's not really one of the words that you
Yeah.
would throw around, but it's certainly got a good amount of drinkability to it. It ticks the boxes of the descriptors that we said right from the start, and
totally.
I think that's a really pleasant and drinkable hazy IPA for sure.
It's funny you feel the superdelic comes through, but for me, I feel the nectarine.
Yep.
I think that's what I thought that's what I was tasting is more so the nectarine. I don't the Falconer's Flight. I can't remember. Is that because we used the Falconer's Flight? I don't get Falconer's Flight at all, but maybe that's because did we use that as the bittering hop? I think we must have. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably why.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's. I think we've obviously different sensitivities to different things, and we're picking up slight different nuances. But I mean, that's good in terms of it's probably well balanced in that respect, and everybody's just picking up slightly different notes. Maybe as it warms up a little bit, you get a few other fruit elements come through. But
definitely,
I mean, it's got a nice integration of all those hop characters.
Yep.
I do get something from the oat, like the oat extract. I think there is something in there that it's like it's contributing. Whether it's a ever so slight, I wouldn't say caramel, but it's like a almost like a creamy malt, biscuity character to it, or like a golden syrup. But don't let that. There's not in a negative way at all. It just helps it bring the beer together.
I would say when I've done all grain hazies, I would say the sort of mouthfeel carries on a little bit more. I would say, and then this probably is quite sort of like. It's definitely, when we have the. I mean, I know statistically the oat malt that we have has a high level of fermentability. And maybe that's where the slight difference is when I do a similar recipe like this using actually like either, I think last time I was talking to you, you mentioned you use like a naked oats.
Yep.
But actually I use the Gladefield's Big O oats, like the malted oats. And, generally I get like probably a little bit more length and mouthfeel out of that. And that's probably the only difference that that's probably the main difference I'm noticing between the all grain, type of recipe for this and the extract side of it.
Yep.
So this is probably more of a slightly lighter and sessionable kind of like hazy, I suppose. And then, traditionally like my all grain recipe would have that sort of lingering mouthfeel, I guess.
I think, you would probably get a bit more dextrin character to it. That would, just give it a bit more body and legs in that respect. But by no means would I say that this is a thin or dry or watery beer.
Definitely not. It's still got a lot of flavour. It's got a lot of flavour. So
absolutely. No, I think that's a great beer for boiling for 15 minutes and a bit of care and love during fermentation. And
definitely.
Great results.
And such an easy one to make, like for guys getting into it. Like, once again, really encourage you guys to sort of get off just the kit and kilo can. Give this a shot. Look, it's so easy. Like you do a short boil, pot at home, and away you go. So
that's right.
That's
and if you've got to brew in a bit of a larger batch or something like that, and maybe use the New England as we have done here, or chuck some Verdant in it or something like that. And
I was thinking the same thing. I think Verdant, I've said it so many times. I love that yeast, and probably for me, if I was to do this again, I would think about maybe trying it with Verdant as well, just to sort of even pop those stone fruit characteristics up even more again.
Absolutely. I mean, they're very different yeasts, and New England is quite unique in terms that it has this peachy character to it, and it's a very unique strain in that respect. Whereas Verdant is, quite a different beast in terms of both the fermentation and the flavour department. But it certainly gives you the opportunity to have a bit of a play and see how the difference is side by side, and you might find a new favourite beer in there.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder actually if you tweaked in tiny bit more malted dextrin, like it would be pretty easy to just top it up with a tiny bit more. If you wanted more of that mouthfeel, possibly that would be an easy way to modify this extract recipe, I suppose.
Yep.
To just get a little bit more mouthfeel in there. There is a tiny bit in the beer enhancer we use in this recipe, so there's some there already. But I reckon if you tweaked a little bit more, maybe you could have a play around with that too and see what you think.
Yep.
But that's pretty much it. Yeah, thanks so much for coming in and tasting the beers with Richard.
Pleasure.
Always good to get your advice. I love having you around, always learn so much. and really appreciate it. I actually have got a little bit of a gift for you for coming in with us. So I'm actually going to give you one of these eskies so you can take this home.
Fantastic.
There you go.
Wonderful.
And I might even actually chuck this keg in there for you so you can get a 4-litre Oxybar keg.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
No worries. So really appreciate it. If you guys want to hear about any of the other new videos coming out, definitely bottom right-hand corner, hit subscribe now. Hit that bell button so you get the notification when new videos come out. And of course, sign up to our Facebook Homebrew community group where you can share tips and tricks on how to get the most of all the gear, or even like how to get the most out of these 15-minute boil recipes. All right, that's it, and see you guys next time.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, nice one.
Awesome.